Hello and welcome to Saturday. I think we're 5 minutes in. So let's go watch shit, hangout. My hair is a fucking disaster. Whatever. I came across this video earlier. I wanted to watch it with you guys, so let's go check this out.
Nowadays, Japanese women are very popular among foreign men. I think Japanese women are beautiful and wonderful, but dating a Japanese woman and marrying one is totally different. Because after getting married and having kids, Japanese women change from cute girls into the boss in the house. We Japanese understand it and can accept it because we are masochists. But for foreigners who don't know that Japanese women evolve like this, it's hard to believe and leaves you unhappy. So today, I'll introduce 5 reasons why foreigners shouldn't marry Japanese women. After watching this video, you definitely avoid getting married to a Japanese woman. Hi, my Japanese female friends. I'm a comedian. This is a joke. Don't be upset.
Okay.
Jokes about Japan.
I have my VPN set to Japan.
Hey
so I want to see
guys,
what weird shit
it's
comes up.
Meshida. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm a comedian and I introduce funny Japanese culture. If you are interested in that, please subscribe to my channel and check out my Patreon page. After getting married, Japanese women evolve 3 levels like Pokemon and become ferocious. Before getting married, when you are dating, Japanese women are very cute and kind. This aspect of Japanese women is well known all over the world and fascinates foreign men. When it comes to Pokemon, they are Charmander. They are also cute and we want to hug them. Then, after getting married, they become Charmeleons and their self-assertion becomes stronger. After having kids, they become monsters like Charizard and breathe fire. They order their husbands around and their husbands are afraid to talk back and just obey their orders. Many Japanese middle-aged salarymen go drinking until late at night after working because in their house there is a monster. In Western countries, housewives are regarded as unemployed and socially vulnerable. But in Japan, housewife is regarded as a profession and that's employer. Japanese housewives dominate their family and chisel money out of their husbands. In Japan, we still have a slavery system. It is called marriage. In Japan, marriage means a system of slavery between housewives and husbands. In Western countries, married couples are a partnership and the husband and wife both work full-time and often have a shared bank account. It's very common. But in Japan, we think that those kinds of married couples are fake. In Japan, traditionally, after marriage, wives manage all the money in the family. Japanese wives are like yakuza bosses. They see their families as subordinates and force them to pay all their earnings to their family. So, Japanese husbands receive their salary from their official boss and pay it all to their actual boss. And any money left over is spent on hostesses. Nowadays, among married couples, 30% of wives are professional housewives, and among double-income married couples, 58% are working part-time. So, 70% of Japanese wives are professional housewives or part-timers. I understand that Japanese men are not helpful in parenting, but also Japanese women don't want to work hard after marriage. The OECD reported the World Gender Gap Rankings, and unfortunately, Japan is ranked 120th. So, people in developed countries look down on Japan as a country where women don't have rights. They think if women can be promoted like men and get a good salary even after getting married and having kids, they will be happy. But I think Western people always impose their values on us. But unfortunately, many Japanese women are different. They don't want to work so hard. They want to go to cafes and hang out with their housewife friends using their husband's money. That's Japanese women's happiness. If there is a world housewife power ranking, Japan definitely will be number 1. Many Western people cannot believe this. Many young Japanese women still want to be housewives. Unfortunately, nowadays in Japan, salaries are low and it's very difficult to find a good husband or wallet. As you already know, I am a poor comedian. My dream is to be a husband. That's why I need more feminists in Japan. I need their support. Many Japanese women's main purpose in getting married is to have kids and raise them successfully. So their husband is just a tool to help them have babies and protect them. After getting married to a Japanese woman, you are not a boyfriend anymore. You become a husband and have sex to get kids. Then, after having kids, you become ATM. Every month, your wife withdraws all your salary forcibly. You cannot change your password. And instead, you are given an allowance every month. The average allowance fee is 35,000 yen a month in Japan. The percentage they take is unbelievable.
Wild.
You could get better rates investing your money in Russia. If there is a world husband power ranking, Japan will definitely be the worst. You will be ranked the same as the male praying mantis. It says that among Japanese married couples, 61% of men and 64% of women are sexless. So you could say that in Japan, the sexless problem is not a problem.
And they're not even for that
custom.
purpose.
Because after having kids, we Japanese married couples become a real family. We never act like a couple in front of our kids, and we feel we cannot have sexual relations with a family member. We cannot imagine it. And of course, we cannot have sex with an ATM. Now, I'm 33 years old and most of my friends are married and all of them are afraid of their wives and they obey their wives. Japanese women don't take up a career in society. Instead, they become CEO of their family and force their husbands to be workaholics and control them secretly. Unlike America, Japanese society is not controlled by the deep state. Our society is controlled by housewives or house yakuza. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe.
Let's see what else YouTube Japan has for us today. Oh, actually, Crimes of the Week International. Let's check it out first.
Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International.
What country?
Authorities in the Australian state of Queensland say that a 35-year-old man is in custody this week following a dramatic car chase down a busy highway. One that apparently ended with the suspect stopping to take a selfie before being placed under arrest.
Wonderful.
The whole thing started at around 11:30 a.m. on February 14th when police were called about a domestic violence disturbance at a home in the suburb of Mountain Creek in the Sunshine Coast region. It's unclear exactly what that incident involved, though it appears that by the time officers arrived, a 35-year-old man involved in the situation had fled the scene in a red Mitsubishi SUV. Once on the road, the suspect began traveling north on the Bruce Highway, where he reportedly began driving recklessly. Witnesses say that he caused a series of near accidents, at one point going airborne after hitting 2 speed bumps at a high rate of speed. It's alleged that he also attempted to steal a truck, which was left immobilized on the highway, causing a major backlog of traffic. The situation continued for more than 2 hours as police attempted to chase down the suspect. According to reports, at least 20 police vehicles were involved in the pursuit, as well as a helicopter which tracked the situation from the air. The chase finally came to an end at around 2 p.m. in Noosa, about 18 miles from where it first began. The 35-year-old pulled over after negotiating with police and was taken into custody, though apparently not before sneaking in a selfie as officers surrounded him and placed him in handcuffs. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still investigating the situation and have not released any motive behind the crime. Of particular interest is a handgun that was found in the suspect's car, which authorities stated may be a replica. So far, the 35-year-old's name has not been released, and he currently remains in custody, awaiting charges.
All right, Australia. Spain. Ooh, we're jumping.
The family of a Colombian-American woman are reportedly desperate for answers this week, following her sudden and suspicious disappearance from the apartment where she was staying on an extended trip to Spain. The whole thing started back on February 5th, when a friend of 40-year-old Anna Knezovich sounded the alarm when she failed to meet up with her in the Spanish city of Barcelona. Anna, who had been going through a tough divorce with her husband David, had decided to take an extended trip to Spain in December and had been staying in Madrid for the past couple of months. When word of Anna's absence made its way back to her family in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, they immediately contacted authorities in Spain as well. It turned out that they had already been concerned about her well-being for a couple of days. Family members stated that they had last heard from Anna on February 2nd when they received 2 strange text messages from her phone. The messages were written in Spanish, but according to her brother, Felipe Henao, they didn't sound like her at all. The word choice and grammar was bizarre, not at all like Anna, who was a native Spanish speaker originally from Colombia. Instead, Felipe said the text looked like it had been run through Google Translate or something. Equally as strange as the composition of the messages was their content. When translated to English, they read, quote, "I met someone wonderful. He has a summer house about 2 hours from Madrid. We are going there now and I will spend a few days there. Signal is spotty. I'll call you when I get back. Yesterday after therapy, I needed a walk and he approached me on the street. Amazing connection, like I never had before." Things only got more concerning when the family had someone travel over to the apartment where Anna had been staying. They were apparently able to get access to the building's surveillance video, which revealed that a mysterious man in a helmet had visited the residence the night before those messages were sent. The man could be seen spray painting over security cameras in the elevator and outside the building. At the time of this recording, Spanish authorities are looking into Anna's disappearance, and there are fears that this unknown man in the helmet may be responsible for kidnapping her. However, Anna's family has expressed concerns over the investigation, saying that they fear Spanish police do not have the resources that they need. In an interview, Felipe stated, quote, "I've heard from the police in Spain. I know they're working really hard. I just don't know if they have all the tools they need. I found out that they don't even have a detective that speaks English, and that makes it really tough, and I find that ridiculous. I wish there was more collaboration between the U.S. and the Spanish law enforcement. This is an American citizen that is missing abroad, and I just want my sister back." Right now, little additional information is available about Anna's life in the lead up to her disappearance, including the details of her divorce. Reports do state, though, that authorities believe her husband David is currently in his home country of Serbia. Anna's friends, meanwhile, claim that she is not the type to suddenly disappear. They say that she is, quote, "not the party girl type," and that she doesn't drink or use drugs. At the time of this recording, the disturbing situation is still under investigation.
All right, axe wielding. Oh, Iranian.
Authorities in Switzerland say that a suspect is dead this week following a dramatic hostage incident aboard a light rail train that ended with police storming the vehicle after hours of failed negotiations. According to reports, the incident unfolded on the evening of February 8th when the train in question was traveling from Yverdon-les-Bains to Beaume, located in the west of the country. The train had just stopped at a station in the town of Essel-sous-Chanvin, about halfway between the two municipalities at 6:35 p.m., when suddenly things took a terrifying turn. A man, later identified as a 32-year-old Iranian national, announced that he was taking all 13 passengers hostage, as well as the light rail engine's conductor. The man was armed with an axe, a hammer, and a knife. Despite tying up some of the victims, police were apparently quickly alerted about what was going on by others who called emergency services with their cell phones. Soon, the entire station had been shut down, and the train had been surrounded by at least 60 officers, including members of a special Swiss police unit. Hostage negotiators were also brought in, at least one of whom spoke in Farsi with the Iranian suspect. Communications with the suspect reportedly lasted for nearly 4 hours until it became clear that no progress was going to be made. At 10:15 p.m., police stormed the train using stun grenades to try and give them a momentary edge over the 32-year-old. According to police, he still tried to attack them, and though less lethal methods were tried at first, eventually they were forced to fire due to concerns about the safety of the hostages. The suspect was struck and killed by gunfire during the exchange, though thankfully it appears that none of the hostages were injured. While many questions remain about the incident, Swiss authorities say that they do not currently believe the attack had a terror-related motive. Instead, they say that the man, who they have identified only as a 32-year-old Iranian asylum seeker, was allegedly motivated by his, quote, insistence on having contact with a member of staff at an asylum center. According to one Swiss news outlet, police had been forced to intervene at this center on previous occasions due to the man's behavior there. At the time of this recording, the situation is still officially under investigation.
Okay. UK, drunk driver falls asleep in the middle of the road.
A 34-year-old Englishman has reportedly been banned from driving, as well as handed a large chunk of community service hours, following a recent incident in which he was caught for drunk driving after deciding to take a nap in the middle of the road. According to reports, the whole thing started in the early morning hours of January 28th, when officers from the Cambridgeshire Police were on patrol near the town of Godmanchester. It was around 4:15 a.m. and they were driving down the A1307, a divided two-lane highway, when they spotted a car that was sitting in the middle of the road. At first, officers thought the car was broken down, so they pulled over to offer the motorist some assistance. However, when they got up to the driver's side window of the vehicle, a Mercedes C220, they realized what was actually going on. The man inside, later identified as 34-year-old Emmanuel Osai, was taking a nap. He still had his seatbelt on, and the vehicle's engine was running. Understandably, police suspected that Emmanuel might have been under the influence of alcohol. So after some questions,
If you are not
they
in
asked
the
him to
driver's
submit
seat,
to a
they cannot
roadside
get you for
test,
anything.
one which he did not pass.
Oh, mate, you're right. Yeah. Can you open the door for me, please? What's
What
up,
a
sir?
nice copper.
Oh, say a little bit sorry, that's right. Okay, now I'm resting.
I'm
You're
wasted.
parked and you're rested in the middle of a dual carriageway?
Oh, no, not this one.
Have you had any alcohol this evening? Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You're in the middle of the road. This isn't a lay-by.
It's the middle of the
You're
road.
in the middle of the road.
Oh,
And this is a junction, and yours just stops here.
here.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, stop. Okay, so
was a
you
while.
failed.
I love that bit at the end there.
Okay,
You failed.
so you failed.
Anyway, all jokes aside,
What a nice-
thankfully no one was hurt as a result of this
I hope if I ever go to England or anywhere like that, I hope I get pulled over like that. Are you okay? No. I think that would be the best way. Oh,
incident.
if only American
Emmanuel
cops
has since
understood that
pleaded
shit.
guilty to drunk driving and
But
was
they get
handed a
scared by
3.5-year
acorns, so
driving
hell
ban, as
are
well
we
as
now?
120 hours of community service.
Speaking of, did you guys see more about the stupid cop who got scared by the acorn? Apparently, he was a special forces soldier or a special forces officer in the army. So, makes me question what kind of special forces. Because that means he had an office job, if that, or he just had his tab. Kidnapped New York man found in Mexico. Oh, we're going to Mexico.
Authorities in the Mexican state of Quintana.
That's not fair. Because last week, or on Tuesday's episode of Crime Zone on regular Crime Zone for the States, they did a story about Canada. So this should have been in there. Well, Mexico and Canada fall in North America area. So we should be on the Tuesday episode, not Saturday episode.
Anaru say that a New York man is alive and safe this week following a terrifying ordeal in which he was allegedly kidnapped by a group of armed men
Cartel?
and left in the
Of course
middle
it
of the
was.
jungle. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on February 4th when 35-year-old Joseph Constantine Buonancontri was ambushed at his home by a group of unknown assailants. Though a native of New York, the 35-year-old
What was he
reportedly
doing in
owns a
Mexico?
home in the remote town of Limones, which is where the alleged attack took place. After disappearing from his residence, Joseph was reported missing, prompting a search that lasted for 3 days. It finally came to an end on the afternoon of February 6th, when locals tipped off police and National Guard members about a suspicious taxi that they had seen in the area. The taxi was full of men with weapons and was seen pulling into an opening in a remote section of jungle off of a road. When authorities arrived in the area, they found Joseph, who was sitting in a small hut in a clearing in the dense
Jesus.
vegetation. His eyes had been taped shut, his wrists and ankles were also bound with tape, and he was holding on to a water bottle. Unfortunately, the suspects responsible had apparently fled, leaving behind only some rifle ammunition, a bulletproof vest, and a small amount of marijuana. While the case is still under investigation at the present time, and it appears no arrests have been made, authorities say that they believe the case had a straightforward motivation.
Drugs.
The unknown men who took Joseph hostage were allegedly trying to get a $200,000 ransom from him. Joseph was not physically injured during the harrowing ordeal,
Yeah, we know.
and he apparently told police he did not know the people who had taken him captive. The situation is still developing.
Jesus, Mexico. Thailand. Police arrest prolific underwater thief.
Authorities in the Thai capital of Bangkok say that they have arrested a prolific thief this week, one with a rather bizarre specialty.
Oh, underwear
Women's
thief.
underwear. According to
I
reports,
said
the
underwater,
whole
but
thing
he was an
started
underwear
on the
thief.
evening of February 11th when a woman in Bangkok's Bangkok Noi district
So he's
filed
just
a
doing panty
complaint at a
raids
local
for fucking-
police station.
Okay.
She said that she had hung her laundry out to dry earlier that day at her first floor apartment, but when she went to retrieve her items, some of her underwear was missing. The woman was baffled
Oh, no,
because she
my
said she had an
underwear's
anti-theft
gone.
screen around her balcony. Police launched an investigation and were quickly able to figure out what
What do you think he's doing with those underwear? Like where do you think they're going? Like, do you think he's doing stuff with them?
had happened after reviewing surveillance video taken at the scene. In it, a man could be seen wedging his hand through a small gap in the mesh screen and grabbing some of the underwear off of the woman's balcony. Additional security footage provided further clues. As they watched the perpetrator walk away, police realized that he was actually a resident of that same building.
Of course he would
38-year-old Natawut Songchai. To their surprise, when police paid a visit to Natawut, they quickly learned that this incident was only the tip of the iceberg. Inside his apartment were 516 bras, 72 pairs of panties, and 3 sets of pajamas. Once officers got the 38-year-old talking, it turned out that he had quite a lot to say. For starters, he said these roughly 600 pieces of women's undergarments were far from the only ones he had stolen. In fact, he had been doing this for 20 years. Natawut explained that his fascination with women's underwear began when he was 18 years old and he was working construction in the province of Samut Sakhon. At night, he would sneak out of his company living quarters, after which he would steal 2 to 6 pairs of underwear per night. Though Natawut said that he managed to keep this hidden from his co-workers and pretty much everyone else for quite some time, there had been some close calls over the years. At one point, about 10 years ago, he said he had been caught by one of his victims, but he made a deal with her to avoid arrest. After that, he went right back to stealing. At the time of this recording, it's unclear exactly what kind of penalty the 38-year-old is looking at, though so far he's been charged with trespassing and committing theft at night. He assured police, though, that whatever the result, after serving his sentence, this time he plans to stop stealing for good.
I don't know. Chilean lottery winner allegedly murdered.
A Chilean lottery winner's amazing luck apparently took a horrific turn last week when he was gunned down during a brazen robbery, a crime that police now allege was set up by one of his own family members.
There's a lot of states where you have
According to reports, it all started on February 6th when the victim, identified only as a 52-year-old merchant from the city of Kyoto, took a trip to the bank with his partner and his nephew. In October of last year, he had won a 1 billion peso, or roughly $1 million US prize in the lottery, and that day he was going to make a withdrawal.
Won it.
The 52-year-old had just finished taking out the equivalent of about $31,000 and had gotten back into the car when suddenly he and his family members were approached by 3 attackers who demanded that he hand over the cash. A struggle ensued, and the lottery winner was shot in the leg, bleeding out and dying just minutes later. By the time police arrived at the scene, the robbers had fled, though it apparently didn't take long for a subsequent investigation to uncover the startling truth. During questioning, the man's nephew reportedly admitted that he had orchestrated the brazen daylight robbery and had set it up so that his uncle would be robbed at the bank. The reason was reportedly undisclosed money troubles he was having. At the time of this recording, the nephew, as well as one of the suspects, has been arrested and charged with robbery and murder. Police are still searching for the 2 other people who allegedly took part in the plot. So far, none of the names of anyone involved in the situation have been released. Authorities in Greece say that 4 people are dead this week, including the gunman, following a shooting at a shipping company that was allegedly carried out by a disgruntled former employee. The whole thing took place sometime on February 12th in the Athens suburb of Glyfada. It reportedly began when 76-year-old Egyptian national Adel El Borai broke into a building belonging to his former employer, a shipping company called European Navigation Inc. Once inside, he allegedly shot 3 people, 2 men and a woman, before barricading himself on the second floor. When authorities arrived at the scene, they reportedly attempted to negotiate with Borai for several hours, though this apparently went nowhere. Eventually, these talks came to an end when the 76-year-old turned his weapon on himself. According to local news sources, the victims are Maria Carnesi, the owner of the company, as well as its managing director Antonis Velasquez and ship captain Ilias Koukoulas. These same sources state that the motive behind the crime was Borai's anger after recently being fired from the company. Apparently, he worked as a caretaker for several of the owner's properties before he was let go after 36 years. Witnesses at the scene told police they saw Borai run into the building right before he started firing, during which time he yelled, quote, "I've come to settle things." While the general
76.
motive behind the crime appears to have been more or less confirmed at this point, the actual details of Barai's termination and grievances are disputed. In particular, some local reports allege that in addition to his termination, what may have pushed Barai over the edge was a decision by the deceased company owner to kick him out of a house that he had been given to live in sometime during his many years of employment. However, the company apparently denies that this was the case. They also claim that Barai's firing wasn't all that recent,
maybe
and that
he
in
wasn't
fact
wrong.
he had been let go early last year. Unfortunately, right now it's unclear
so
which
who am I to
version of
say?
events is actually true. The situation is still under investigation.
Okay, what's next? Is that it? Oh,
Before
that's
we
all the
wrap up,
crimes of the week?
we'd like to take a
Only
second to
19
give a
minutes.
huge shout out to
I'm surprised today. All right, let's see what Japan YouTube has for us still. MLMs. God bless America. Oh, that's such a good movie. If you've never seen that movie, I highly recommend God Bless America. Actually, let's go watch that scene.
True. But you know what I was thinking?
Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning.
Maybe the whole team should get cancer.
Oh, killed it, boss. I can't believe you said that.
Oh, come on. I'm just saying what you're all thinking.
Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning.
I feel so sad for him. Is he for real? Yes, he's for real. He was on Fat Boy this morning.
Oh, yeah, that's real, all right. Real bad.
Oh, you're real bad.
This is such a good movie. Bobcat Goldthwait directed this movie, and it's just so good.
You probably like him secretly. See right there. He was like you.
Oh.
Here comes the pitchy part. Yeah.
What about you, Frank? Did you see that freak on American Superstars last night?
What?
Last night. The freak on American Superstars.
No. I mean, yes, I saw that guy accidentally. I don't watch American Superstars.
You don't?
You don't watch it, but you saw him. Yeah. Right. What, are you too good for the show?
Yeah, I'm too good for a karaoke contest that makes stars out of people with no talent.
You can't say that, dude. Some of those kids have real talent.
No, they don't. They have good pitch. They're relatively clean. They're non-threatening to little girls and old ladies. They have the ability to stand in line with a stadium full of other desperate and confused people. But I assure you, they are talent-free.
Yeah, well, I bet 32 million people would disagree with you, bro. Because that's how many people called in to vote last year on the finale.
The word bro.
I wish I was a super genius inventor and could come up with a way to make a telephone into an explosive device that was triggered by the American Superstars voting number. The battery could explode and leave a mark on the face so I could know who to avoid talking to before they even talked. And I could look and say, no, you're not going to be saying anything that's going to add any value to my life.
Yeah, but it's funny.
No.
I mean, you gotta admit that. Stephen Clark, that's funny shit, Frank.
It's not nice to laugh at someone who's not all there. It's the same type of freak show distraction that comes along every time a mighty empire starts collapsing. American Superstars is the new Coliseum. And I won't participate in watching a show where the weak are torn apart every week for our entertainment. I'm done, really. Everything is so cruel now. I just want it all to stop.
Feel sorry for Jennifer Aniston? Oh, it's tragic.
It's such a good movie. I highly recommend that movie. If you have time, please. It's on Tubi for free. I do know that for a fact right now. Did we see Crimes of the Week International? I don't think we did.
Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International.
We did, or maybe we didn't. Oh no, this is last week's. Never mind. That's the other week. We can't watch that. We're already past that. Oh, Saturday morning cartoons died. I do like Bruce too. I licked. No, it doesn't. I don't know who you are saying that movie's good. You're wrong. Anybody go watch Madam Web, you'll understand how terrible that fucking movie is. Oh, ow, shit, that hurt.
There's an interesting phenomenon that you can easily test out on any labeled map. And for some reason, I've been thinking about it a lot recently. And that is the reverse Baltimore phenomenon. First, the Baltimore phenomenon is where prominent places get left off a map because there isn't enough space to label them. I'll show you what I mean.
What do you mean?
This is Baltimore in the US.
Yes.
It's the largest city in the state of Maryland and has a population of over 500,000 people in the city and 2.8 million
I've been
people,
to Baltimore,
including the surrounding
I've been to the malls in
area.
Baltimore.
But just next door is the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. So if we zoom in on a map of the area,
I could have went to
we can
D.C.
see them
and I
sitting
should have when I was
side
in
by side.
Baltimore.
But when we zoom out, which of the two do you think is going to be labeled? Of course, it's the capital city.
Yeah.
You can see that as we zoom the map out,
Baltimore
the labels
disappears.
on the map, the actual word that says Washington needs to be big enough to read. So it covers more land and the Baltimore label gets left off. Washington is a capital and also a bit bigger than Baltimore, but there are other examples of the Baltimore
not
effect
the biggest.
around the globe as well. Here's Guangzhou in China. Over 14.2 million people live in its urban area.
But you
and
pull out.
right down the road is Hong Kong, home to 7.4 million people.
You pull out, you're going to
If
see
we
Hong
zoom
Kong
out
over
again,
Gonzan.
we can see another great example of the Baltimore effect, with Guangzhou's label being jettisoned in favor of Hong Kong's.
So
This
Hong Kong
phenomenon
is more prominent.
called cartographic generalization, and it's actually the reverse of this phenomenon that I've been thinking a lot about recently, but I'll get to that in just a moment.
I still want to go to
Generalization
Australia. I think
happens
that'd be
when
the
you go
funnest
from a
adventure
large
ever.
scale to a small
That
scale
or
map.
Iceland.
In other words, from zoomed in to zoomed out. It wouldn't make sense to try and label every tiny village.
No,
and
you won't
river
label
and
the
hill
ones that
on a
are
small-scale map,
specific.
because then it would be unreadable and unusable. So people who design physical maps and the algorithms for digital ones have to decide which labels to lose when going from zoomed in to zoomed out. And usually they decide to keep the most significant labels: capital cities, big cities, country
Cities that
names,
make
state
sense.
names, etc. Generalization isn't a fault of maps. In fact, it's on purpose. And it doesn't just refer to what happens with the labels, it's also how maps smooth out coastlines or blur together forests to make them easier to depict at a small scale. But for labels, cartographic generalization works both ways. Sometimes an area is densely populated, so there are some large cities that get left off the map, and sometimes an area is so sparsely populated that small towns get labeled, even when huge cities elsewhere don't. And this is what I've been thinking about. All those small towns that are almost always labeled on small-scale maps. Here's an example. This is Alice Springs in Australia. For reference, this map doesn't label Guangzhou, a city of 14 million people. So how big do you think Alice Springs is?
Not big
Well,
at all.
It has
probably.
a population of 25,000. But
Okay,
the fact
but
that
why
it's
is it on
right
the map?
bang in the middle of the continent, only surrounded by even smaller towns and communities, means that it gets labeled on many, 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 many maps.
Okay.
Here's my old family atlas that has a map showing Alice Springs, and this one does label Guangzhou, but many other cities that are massively larger than Alice Springs
Borneo,
miss it.
Sumatra.
Bandung, Indonesia; Nagoya, Japan; Amman, Jordan; Beirut, Lebanon; Marseille, France; Amsterdam, Netherlands; Manchester, UK; and, of course, Baltimore, Maryland. You can easily try this out for yourself. Look at any map or atlas you find, or just zoom Google Maps until you can just see Alice Springs, right in the center of Australia, and then look around to see what you can and can't find.
You can't
can find huge cities missing because of the Baltimore phenomenon. And you can see tiny towns that you might not normally focus on. A kind of reverse Baltimore effect.
That's wild. I might have to do that later.
Anyway, thanks for watching me ramble about cartographic generalization. I'll see you next time.
Learned something new today, you guys. Cartographic generalization. Okay. Had no idea about that. I just beat her a little. I kind of want to watch that, but wait, how is Cameron a fucking, no, that's
It's
wrong.
been a hot minute since we discussed Modern Family, and by a hot
Okay.
minute, I mean about over a year. In our 3,000 subscriber video, What Derailed Modern Family, we went through exactly, well, what derailed Modern Family. And in short, it was
Do you guys
basically
like Modern
everything.
Family?
Character derailment, lack
It's
of
not
original
bad,
ideas,
but
repetitive jokes.
I won't sit there
but
and
one of the
actually watch
main
it.
things
I'll
that
see
we focused
clips
on
and
in that
whatnot,
video
but-
was the destruction of one of the best characters in the entire show, Cameron Tucker. And it was so bad that not only did I decide to create new names for all the characters season 6 and onward, minus Mitchell and Gloria of course, but also it made me want to go back to the character and describe just how bad he ended up becoming. So get ready to bask in the unadulterated horror in the supreme villainy of Cameron Tucker.
How is Cameron a
First
villain?
off, I want to reiterate that before season 6, Cam was a great character. He was fun. He was funny, he was charismatic, and above all, he was a good guy who every so often would get caught up in the heat of the moment, but at the end of the day, he meant well. Did he have some control issues and perhaps a little bit of a swollen ego?
Yes.
Yeah, but he still managed to be a good guy. As the show would go on, he would just get worse and worse. I don't want to repeat the points from the old video too much, so I'll just go into some of his best of villainous hits, so to speak. In the episode Sergeant P, Cam tracks down a single mom who obscured his view of Lily's dance recital, catfishes her, and then publicly shames her despite knowing that she and her son have terrible lives. In Queer Eye's Full Hearts, Mitchell's court case was going to get this big special on the local news, and it was going to give it all the grassroots support and momentum that it needed to succeed, only for Cam to let the studio hijack it and then force Mitchell into menial labor. In the episode, Mother! With an exclamation point, so I had to yell it, Cam ends up teaming up with Dee Dee, the de facto main antagonist of the show, so that she could use him as a puppet to control Mitchell's life. And when Mitchell objects to this, he's the bad guy. And finally, the worst episode of them all featuring Cam, Connection Lost. To be fair, this is one of the worst episodes of the entire show, but wow, Cam's evil is fully on display. While everybody's freaking out over the possibility that Haley ran away,
I can't with this. M-rated Nintendo games use Sly. What? Oh. I don't like that because I use Axe every once in a while. I'm intrigued business.
I remember being in middle school and people using Axe after gym class like it was a shower replacement in a can, which
It's
it wasn't.
not. Please don't.
It was everywhere.
Got a waft of nostalgia.
It's for teenage boys, and adults shouldn't be using it.
Kids of that age, not very, men especially, not very good at washing. So, of course, putting something on was probably a good idea, considering how little time they spend in the shower.
The Axe effect.
Axe arrived in the U.S. in 2002.
Did you guys
and
wear
within
Axe?
a
Who
decade,
wore
its
Axe
parent
here?
company, Unilever, had sold about $500 million worth of
I
Axe
didn't know
products,
Unilever made
mostly
Axe.
by winning over the American teenage boy.
When I hear the brand name Axe, my initial thoughts are probably one of the 5 most successful case studies of really disciplined consumer science and high-level marketing strategy over the last couple of generations.
But while Axe continues to be a global phenomena, sales have fallen sharply in the US. Now, the brand is refocusing its messaging and strategy.
I want to know who came up with those marketing campaigns. Losing momentum. Entering a new market.
Axe was first launched in 1983
Really?
in France under the name Lynx, something that it's still
Did
called
not
in
know
some
that.
countries due to trademark-related reasons. But the
that's
fragrance
why you
initially
see
struggled to
Lynx
take off.
at, like,
In
dollar store and
1992,
whatnot.
Anne Gottlieb stepped in as a fragrance consultant for Axe.
They were really misguided about what the fragrances should smell like because they thought of the brand as a deodorant. And I treated it like a fine fragrance. And instead of having personal care perfumers work on the fragrances, I brought in the same perfumers that I used on Calvin Klein.
And while Axe is often associated with provocative and humorous advertising in the early 2000s, the brand took itself far more seriously during its first 10 years.
Lynx. Because first impressions last
forever.
It just looked like advertising created by sort of 45-year-olds who thought they understood 15-year-olds and they didn't.
In 1994, Hegarty's advertising firm began working with Axe to help give the brand a reboot. They worked together until 2017.
The very first
Essence right there.
spot we did for that commercial, that was called House Party. The reality of this is that the idea that you spray this on and you get the girl is sort of a nonsense, really. I mean, they know it.
It really is.
We know it. Like all those things, so why don't we just kind of play to that?
Axe entered the US market in 2002 and sold an estimated $20 million worth of product that year. By 2007, that number crossed 300
all those
million.
boys in high school.
A brand that could recognize its own irony resonated with teenagers who were looking for a bit of swagger.
If you're trying to sell something to people who are a little bit unsure, in themselves, lacking confidence, so humor is a great way of overcoming all of that.
And there were no influencers then other than customers on their own. And the word of mouth for this brand was unbelievable.
Even if it wasn't always for the right reasons, the fragrance took off. Axe's rapid success in the US quickly led to the expansion of its product offerings.
They launched all different other products that took the advertising dollars away from the body spray itself.
The many and rapid attempts at expanding product offerings came with challenges. Between 2012 and 2017, US retail sales fell over $100 million.
New consumer demographic in terms of women's fragrance, a new direction in terms of a category, in terms of face care, and a new marketing strategy, social media platform in terms of storytelling and working with a graphic novel for the first time. It was a lot to achieve all at once.
The company's advertising tone also saw a major shift in 2016 with its Find Your Magic campaign.
A great opportunity for the team to begin to really nuance and pivot the message of the branding from so much focused around kind of animal attraction, boy meets girl, maybe more what we would call today toxic masculinity, to a more nuanced approach that was a bit more inclusive.
But it didn't boost sales to the numbers that the brand saw during its heyday a few years prior. In 2022, Axe's total US sales fell to an estimated 300 million.
Axe became a bit self-important rather than, look guys,
I'm gonna pee here in a minute. Fuck. I'm intrigued by that theory. Why don't ships have headlights? I'll be back in a minute. Don't die, anybody. All right, let us continue here. Why don't ships have headlights?
Headlights. They help us drive our cars and our bikes at night,
20%.
lighting up the path ahead for safe navigation. Illuminating the darkness can help us avoid all kinds of hazards. In fact, miners have used head torches for decades for the same reason. But what about ships? Many have encountered disaster and danger at sea, most famously the RMS Titanic, which struck an iceberg on an unusually dark and still night in April 1912. Even then, at the subsequent inquiry, the question was asked, would a large torch have helped the situation? Why don't ships have headlights like cars? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your friend Mike Brady from Ocean Liner Designs, and today we'll try and answer the kind of question that might only occur to you in the shower. Why don't ships have headlights?
That is a very shower thought. Like you're sitting there in the shower and thinking, I wonder why.
It was a freezing cold night when RMS Titanic's lookouts, high up on the mast and the crow's nest platform, spotted the iceberg ahead. In fact, they didn't even really see it, rather they described it as a lack of stars against the sky.
Like,
it was
hey,
so dark
in there.
that the berg just blended right in to the sky and sea ahead. With just over 30 seconds to react, the crew tried to get the ship out of harm's way,
20%.
but it was too late. Shortly after the ship had sunk,
50%.
in New York City, the first inquiry was chaired by a US Senator, William Alden Smith, and he asked many of the crew and passengers what they thought had happened. Two of the ship's officers testified that if they'd had a spotlight that night of some kind, it would have helped them sight the berg sooner. And the thing is, it was an unusually dark night. Moonless, as they say, when the moon is hidden by the Earth's shadow and blacked out. Coupled with the rare calm, where the water was as flat as a garden pond, the crew stood very little chance of spotting the iceberg in the first place. Ice can be seen from far away when there's a moon. The light will reflect off its white surface, but if there's no moon, then the waves lapping at the berg's base can be spotted too. So, would a spotlight have helped? The chances are that the officers are right, and that yes, in those unusual, specific conditions, a spotlight might have helped them. But the truth is that powerful lights like that mounted on the front of the ship can be more dangerous than they are useful. The ship's crew rely on their eyesight for safe operating of their ships at sea, and they've done that for centuries. Lookouts were prized, in the days of sail, for their excellent vision. A skilled lookout could spot a ship on the horizon and then determine its type and home nation when, to you or I, it might have looked like a small white speck. At night, lookouts were employed to keep an eye out for tiny signs of friend, foe, or danger.
Enemy.
The slight flicker of a lantern off in the distance, for example, or if the navigation was completely off, the telltale roar and white foam of breaking waves on the shore ahead. For this, lookouts needed excellent night vision, the ability to pierce through the darkness and discern what it was that they were looking at.
That's why they wore eye patches.
By Titanic's day, and even today, things had not changed much.
No.
Sharp vision is still very much prized,
You need a
but
good
so
lookout.
is night vision. Being able to figure out what you're seeing ahead or to the side of you at night is absolutely paramount for a few reasons.
So that means they're wearing
First,
the cheese?
for navigation. Beacons and buoys floating on the surface mark crucial channels and water lanes like highways, where ships of different types and sizes should sail. Seeing them through the dark will ensure safe passage, but if you miss their telltale location, the ship may be headed for disaster. The running lights of other ships at night are critical as well. Ships have lights positioned in specific locations to help identify which direction they're heading in. The port, or left side of a ship by the bridge, has a red light, and the starboard, or right-hand side of the ship, has a green one. And then another light is positioned way up high in the ship's mast or antenna. From a distance then, other ships can see what direction you're heading in. For example, if you can see just red, then the ship is heading right to left. But if you can see all three of those lights at the same time, then the ship's heading directly at you. But if the ship had big spotlights fitted like the headlights of a car, suddenly the night's darkness ahead would be made murky by the powerful spotlights. You couldn't make anything out. The crew's night vision would be ruined, and nothing could be seen at all. Channel markers or other ships' lights might go unnoticed, leading to disaster. It's the same situation when it comes to obstacles or dangerous conditions ahead. A searchlight on the bow of a ship might only be useful for a few rare times in a ship's life. If it was on all the time, it would be a massive headache for the crew who are trying to see way ahead of their ship. Night vision is so prized that on liners of Titanic's day, anything forward of the bridge was blacked out. Lights either were shielded or turned off to preserve night vision ahead. Titanic was actually fitted with deck lamps all over the upper decks to provide 360 degrees of ambient light, but the ones closest to the bridge were fitted with a shroud so that the light couldn't shine forward and ruin the crew's night vision. Night vision was so prized, in fact, that the Titanic's helmsman, who was the man actually at the steering wheel or helm of the ship, was kept in a special room called the wheelhouse, which was then fitted with shutters so that the light of the room wouldn't spill into the main navigating bridge and ruin the crew's night vision. On modern passenger ships, the conditions are actually the same. One of the most quiet, dark places at sea on a big cruise ship is right at the front towards the bow, where things are kept in the dark. But of course, on the bridge of a ship, you still need to see what you're doing, so red light can be used to light areas up without ruining night vision. So it's often used, especially on warships and submarines, to preserve crucial night vision for the crew. But spotlights and searchlights on ships have come in very handy indeed. In fact, contemporary ships to Titanic were built with a kind of headlight. It's likely that on the night of Titanic's sinking, even a low-powered spotlight mounted near the bow might have helped illuminate the iceberg earlier. But in deciding to use it in the first place, the crew would have surely been extremely nervous at having their night vision ruined by the light. If Titanic was actually fitted with a searchlight, I doubt they'd have even used it at all, because that night's conditions would probably have been one of the absolute few and rare times it might have ever come in handy. Another time might have been in the fog. If a ship is surrounded by dense fog, light will way forward.
That would not help.
The Windows. This is a Windows phone. I know, it looks pretty weird, right?
Yeah.
But at one point, this was considered the future of mobile computing.
No.
So what happened? To understand why it flopped so hard, we have to take a look at the history of Microsoft and the man behind it. It's a story of regret, corporate espionage, and blackmail. Strap in. Today we learn about
why Windows Phone failed, why it matters.
Alright, let's start from the beginning. Before the iPhone, mobile devices looked very different. It was really open season out there for manufacturers. You had phones that folded, swiveled, and slid. There was no predetermined form factor. Every phone was unique. And back then, it was that unique design that sold the phones. The most popular phones were the ones with cool and unique designs that made you look awesome. You can probably imagine how difficult it was to design an OS for these phones with varying shapes, sizes, and resolution screens. With no standardized form factor or even a standardized OS, it took months for apps to be supported on new phones, if they even got supported at all. That's where Microsoft comes in. Their mobile OS was the most popular among phone manufacturers due to its malleability. Before the iPhone, Microsoft had a 43% mobile OS share, outselling BlackBerry and even Apple. But one thing is different between these two guys. BlackBerry makes phones to put their software onto. Microsoft sells the software to be put on other brands' phones. That's why the Microsoft Phone OS was so widespread, because of its malleability and the fact that it was on so many different brands of phones. But that was about to change.
Steve, let me ask you about the iPhone and the Zune, if I may. The Zune was getting some traction, then Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500?
Love it or hate it, Apple was a genius in creating a whole new market with the iPhone. A mobile touchscreen device was so revolutionary, it had other companies dropping year-long projects and scrambling just to keep up. Android, Apple's only real competitor, took over a year to come out. That's how ahead of the game Apple was. But one guy didn't get the hype, and it cost him his career. Once the iPhone came out, Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer didn't believe that it would sell. This was a major mistake, and he's admitted that in later interviews.
I don't think the software was the right play there, but the two most profitable companies now in our business are Apple, Samsung, Microsoft. Right. For years it was Microsoft and some other guys. Yeah. So do I wish we had done that sooner? Of course I do.
While the rest of the world was scrambling to fill a new market that Apple had created, Steve was laughing and patting himself on the back for being smarter than everybody. In 2008, he said he planned to be CEO for another 10 years, but that never happened. So what was Microsoft's mobile division doing? They were creating a competitor to the iPod, a now 8-year-old device, which flopped. People didn't want this when this or this existed. At the time, Microsoft wasn't too good at making hardware. It's in the name, Microsoft. They were very good at software, but not too great at hardware.
When the name of your company is Microsoft and your formula works, our formula was working. We were software guys. Bill Gates told Paul Allen when Paul first wanted to do hardware back in the 70s, we are software guys. So for us, it was kind of a religious transformation.
Microsoft was still stuck in the mindset that people would buy whatever and pay whatever just because they were Microsoft, but that just wasn't the case anymore. To sell a product, it had to be fun to use, it had to be convenient, and most importantly, it had to be stylish. And Apple was just pulling it off. Steve had convinced himself that the biggest problem with the iPhone, besides the cost, was the keyboard. He believed that a mobile device for business users needed to have a physical keyboard to send emails.
And it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine.
So when Microsoft finally realized that mobile devices were the future, their first attempt had a physical keyboard. They called it the Kin, and it released to critical acclaim. It sold millions of units on the first day, outselling even the iPhone, and I'm just kidding. It flopped. It only lasted like 48 days. It was so bad, they discontinued it after 48 days. What really happened was a rushed product that didn't live up to the promises that were set by Microsoft. For one, it had a data plan, something that Steve had criticized Apple for having. On top of that, it was running the same software as the Zune we talked about last chapter. So it's the exact same useless device, except they've added a keyboard and a SIM card. It was supposed to have a brand new Windows OS at launch, but the Windows Mobile team pulled out last second out of spite. And they did that for two reasons. One was the outdated keyboard, and two was the fact that the whole thing was just kind of half-baked. Microsoft pulled it out of the market before it could do any real damage to their brand, but it was already 2010. It was too late. Microsoft had just spent the last 2 years working on a failed product with nothing to show for it. Or so they thought. That mobile team, they had one last trick up their sleeve.
Windows Phone.
Yeah, so it turns out those guys had been working on their own product launch at the same time as the Kin, and that's why they pulled out. Their new phone had no keyboard, and it was positioned as a business alternative to Android or iPhone. They launched it only 3 months after the Kin was discontinued. Let's get this straight. 2 departments within Microsoft were actively working towards the same goal and sabotaging each other at the same time. The current CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, describes the incident in his book like this. Something was changing, and not for the better. Innovation was being replaced by internal politics, and we were falling behind. Now let's take a look. This is the Microsoft phone that Steve Ballmer wanted Microsoft to make, and this is the Microsoft phone they made 3 months later. It may look like these two devices came out a decade apart, but they came out in the same year. The Windows Phone launched October 2010 with Windows Phone 7, and the world responded with a resounding meh. Sure, it was promising. It had the reported best keyboard on any smartphone ever. Shout out Steve. It was refreshing and different from its competitors, but it was too late. Microsoft made the mistake of charging manufacturers to use Microsoft OS on their phones. So apart from just a couple of manufacturers, it was much cheaper to purchase and make Android phones. And thanks to that Microsoft tax, developers didn't even port their apps onto Windows OS. That means no Instagram, no Google apps. You basically didn't have any of the important stuff on your Windows phone. Sure, you had LinkedIn, a Microsoft product, but what kind of business machine doesn't have Gmail? Realizing their mistake a little bit, they tried to compensate by releasing Windows Phone 8 shortly after launch. They invited developers to come over to the blue side as long as you pay us. But because they were so late to the game and because they charged for their OS, they had to do something drastic to make up for their lost market share. And they had to do it quick.
Scramble Part 2.
Microsoft's problems probably could have been solved if they made their software free, but they were too stubborn to admit that, and they kept pushing onward. This was really the era of failures for Microsoft. And after losing tons of money on the new Surface, Steve stepped down from his position in 2014. Sadly, it meant that the guy behind some of the greatest parts of Windows Phone OS was gone. Despite his mistakes, Steve was genuinely a good CEO who had some great ideas, even if they were a little too late.
You know, I don't regret our journey, and I don't regret the fact we're tremendously profitable by making operating system software for PCs. But relative to new form factors, like the phone was new to us, I should have moved us faster.
In 2015, we saw the last remnants of Steve in the release of Windows Phone 10. Yeah, they skipped 9, it's a whole thing. Realizing that other manufacturers wouldn't make their phones, they bought Nokia to make their phones for them. Making their phones in-house was a strategy that was working excellently for Apple at the time. Satya described the deal in his book like this. The hope behind the acquisition was that combining the engineering and design teams at Nokia with the software development at Microsoft would accelerate our growth with Windows Phone and strengthen our overall device ecosystem. The merger would be the big dramatic move Windows needed to catch up with iOS and Android on mobile. Satya also voted against buying Nokia because he didn't see the need for a third OS in the smartphone market. While I respected Steve and understood the logic of growing our market share to build a credible third ecosystem, I did not get why the world needed a third ecosystem in phones, unless we changed the rules. So they did. They launched this brand new line of Nokia phones that above all focused on cool design, a strategy that was working excellently for Apple. Microsoft finally got it. To stay relevant and sell units, you had to be different. With colorful, removable plastic backs, the Nokia covers could be customized or even traded. You could remove the battery without any tools, an unheard of feature at the time that I kind of wish all phones had. A couple of models, like this one here, had really good cameras. This one has 41 megapixels, which is like really good and better than some of the cameras on the iPhone even today. The advertising was amazing at the time, pitting itself directly at Apple and Android users, not just existing Windows users.
You think if they knew about the Nokia Lumia, they'd stop fighting all the time?
I don't know. I think they kind of like fighting.
They also released a software to be able to use your phone as a Windows PC. Honestly, like, this sounds amazing, but it was just a little bit too late. They had sunk way too much money into Steve's pipe dream that honestly had come like 3 years too late. At this point, they would have had to outsell Apple to break even, which obviously wasn't going to happen.
No.
So Satya Nadella, the new CEO, cut their losses and pulled the plug in 2017.
Chapter 5, the aftermath.
Alright, so if this was one of my normal tech reviews, this would be the part where I tell you this phone has been my daily driver since I got it. But that would be a lie. Yeah, so it turns out when a company discontinues a product, it just stops working. Not only is there not many apps supported on this thing, but even if there was, I wouldn't be able to download them because the Microsoft Store stopped working. Was this video a way to justify the fact that I bought 2 phones that don't work?
Yeah.
No. The Windows Phone was like genuinely a really good product. Not only could you see the potential, it actually got there.
I don't think
it didn't
there
matter.
was a potential, though.
We built a main...
Sponsored by...
Pebble Ray.
I'm intrigued by that Hitler video a little bit, but oh, okay, intriguing.
Every Suicide Squad member ever. The leaders. Amanda Waller. Amanda Blake Waller Duvall. Degree in political science, intimidator, team leader, tactical analyst, firearms and hand-to-hand combat.
Okay.
Black Manta. David Milton Hyde. Genius level intellect, hand-to-hand combat,
Did not know Black
swordsmanship,
Panther was
field
part of the
leader,
Suicide
disguise
Squad.
master, demolitions, artillery. Black Mask. Roman Sionis. Firearms and hand-to-hand combat. Mind control. Team leader disguised as Blue Beetle, mob boss. Briscoe. Briscoe. Aviation, pilot, mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Cameron Chase. Cameron Chase. Agent. Field leader, power nullification, psychokinesis.
Did not know that. Let's see if we can find one we
Deadshot.
like.
Floyd Lawton. Hand-to-hand combat, tactical analyst, mechanical engineer, field leader, expert marksman, peak human condition. Harley Quinn. Arlene Francis Quinzel. Toxic immunity, jester teamed weaponry, gymnast, field leader, trained psychiatrist, hand-to-hand combat. Katana. Tatsuya Mashiro. Japanese, martial arts,
I like how was that a skill set? Japanese.
King Faraday, Kingsley Faraday, immortality, espionage, hand-to-hand combat, firearms. Lex Luthor, Alexander Joseph Luthor, genius level intellect, business management, political influence, exosuit, super strength, flight, hand-to-hand combat. Luke, team leader, intimidator, military connections, stun gun baton. Manchester Black, field leader, telekinesis, telepathy, hand-to-hand combat, deception, leadership,
squads.
tactical.
There's like multiple Suicide Squads apparently.
As I
It's hard to
Oh, Chili is having a new baby on Bluey. Okay.
I'm so excited.
I turn on my
What is this? Why is this?
So, a while back now, in the In a Nutshell video about Costco, arguably one of my favourite stores on planet Earth, when I went to check the comments section, amongst people sharing their Costco love stories and employees revealing secrets about the store, I kept seeing one thing. Over
IKEA.
And over. You should do a video about IKEA. Do IKEA next. IKEA next. You should do IKEA next. IKEA next. IKEA in a nutshell when? Do
like
IKEA,
IKEA,
please.
though.
Next IKEA. Do you guys honestly think I give in that easily?
tomorrow.
That I just read all your comments and just make a video because so many of you requested it? Am I going to do that? Yes. Sweden. The land of Fika, ABBA, PewDiePie, and of course, IKEA. Now, Costco and IKEA aren't too dissimilar in the fact that they're both gigantic warehouses, but nothing is more striking than seeing that gigantic blue building with that shiny yellow logo repping the Swedish colours. Swedish flags posted outside the building. In fact, I believe they should just take all existing Swedish embassies and
make
move
them
them
IKEAs.
into IKEAs. Founded on the 28th of July 1943 in Älmhult, Sweden. Okay, you're going to have to let me off for my Swedish pronunciation the entire way through this video. I can already see all my Swedish audience disappearing as I speak. Anyway, founded on the 28th of July 1943 in Älmhult, Sweden by 17-year-old Ingvar Kamprad, then the first IKEA store officially opening in 1958, IKEA now have 474 stores worldwide across 64 countries. So while at 17, Ingvar was starting a Swedish retail empire, I was unemployed, getting killed on Overwatch. Now for any of you that are unaware or have never had the chance to go, IKEA is a giant furniture wonderland. And when I say giant, boy, these things can get big. The largest IKEA in the world, in Pasay City, Philippines, is an eye-watering 65,000 square meters, which is actually the size of Sweden. In fact, they're so large, the second you enter the store, there is a huge map of the entire building, as well as arrows along the floor that you have to follow around the store like you're playing some weird Swedish version of Bloons Tower Defense. And although they have numerous safety measures in place to ensure you don't get lost in the frantic field of furnishings, it's a common fact that IKEA do not have a staff recruitment process. No job interviews. They simply wait for the weak customers to wander off the track, get lost, and become consumed by the store. So, walking into the primary coloured palace, you're met with all your furniture needs. Now, IKEA predominantly works off a sort of showroom design. So as you walk around the store, there'll be these pre-made example rooms, like the ones you can clip onto your house in The Sims, that you're free to wander around to your heart's content. Each full of various pieces of furniture that you can purchase individually, which sounds harmless on the surface, and a good method really. But when you're walking around the rooms alone, especially if the store is somewhat empty, it is the eeriest thing ever. The rooms are so detailed, you forget you're in IKEA for a second and fall for the illusion, until you try to turn a tap on and no water comes out. Or the fake plastic IKEA food on an IKEA plate, sat atop an IKEA table that looks far too edible for my liking. At times, I feel like I'm walking around someone's actual living room. Like the spaces are so detailed and feel lived in. I'm convinced one day I'm just going to walk around IKEA and find my own bedroom on display. Or I'll wander into a showroom and I'll just find a bloke drinking a Stella while he's watching the Premier League. Then I'll go to leave and it turns out I wasn't in IKEA at all, and I was in a house in Greater Manchester. But hey, I mean, speaking of getting lost, I guess IKEA would be one of the better places to get lost in, really. You're basically living in a 200-room house. Also, important to note that IKEA has to be in the top 3 places ever to play hide and seek.
Yep.
Not that I do that, of course, because I'm a fully grown man.
Fuck you.
I play tag instead. It seems that everyone is drawn to an IKEA at some point in their lives to fill out their house with the Swedish craftsmanship. It's fun walking around and seeing the different furniture they have on offer. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that would look great here.
Nice.
And something I do every single time without even realising it's a feat of human nature. When you're in an IKEA, no matter how many times you walk past a sofa, you either have to sit on it to test the comfiness, or so you don't look like you're playing some sort of freak game of musical chairs sitting around every single sofa on the store floor. You do that weird, subtle thing where you lean to one side and push your hand into them to test the sitting capabilities. Why do I do this every time? Like I'm some sort of professional sofa reviewer, walking around with a clipboard, pushing my hand into sofas. And it's even worse with the beds. They need to put chains around those bad boys, because you damn well bet I'm lying on every single one of them at any given chance and rating them in a tier list on which one is best, then buying none of them. It takes me about 9 hours total to get around the store by the time I'm done violating all the products. And how can I forget about the product names? An iconic part of the IKEA experience. The Swedish furniture names. Now, whilst to the untrained, monolingual eye, it may look like an employee jumped on a keyboard, but the names do have logic to them. Each product is a Swedish word relating to that type of product. So outdoor products are named after Scandinavian islands, rugs are named after towns in Sweden and Denmark, but to anyone that doesn't speak Swedish, the names sure can offer up a range of emotions upon first read. IKEA is the only store in existence that can make common household products sound like warriors. Vilborg the Destroyer, Silverlon the Mighty, or Jar Blomster the grey bedspread 150 by 210 centimetres for £7. And certain products are named after Swedish names, so you can have a bookshelf called Billy. The Billy Bookshelf. You know, I personally think we should apply this system to every store out there. I want to be able to walk into my nearest department store and buy a crowbar called Derek, or a lawnmower called Russell. Now, most IKEA products are flat pack, a system introduced to IKEA in the 1950s. So put shortly, you have to follow the IKEA instructions and build the product from scratch with the parts you're given. Kind of like adult Lego, which seems easy in theory.
No, it's
but
not
you lose
easy.
One
There is
screw,
always a
and the whole
missing
thing
part
is
in
a
your IKEA
write-off.
furniture.
I'm so bad at constructing IKEA flat pack furniture that I'll make a mistake and just accept it and use the furniture anyway. So I'll have people come round to visit and be like, why does this table have 3 straight legs and one that's forcefully drilled into the top of it? And I'll sort of just play it off like, oh, that's the design. It said that in the instructions. That's the Gareth table, which is a great cover up and all, but it doesn't fix when you're alone and your flat pack fumbles start affecting your daily life. I'll be eating my dinner and it'll just slide onto the floor out of nowhere because I read the instructions wrong 3 months earlier and one leg is 3 inches smaller than all the others. At this point, my house is so full of IKEA flat pack furniture built wrong that it looks like I'm trying to host some abstract art show with various weird sculptures. Now in life, there is often times where you have to make a decision. What career path you want, your firstborn's name, what colour croc you want to wear each morning. And arguably, the most important question every individual needs to answer is which IKEA stuffed animal toy you choose to own. Forget the furniture, the stuffed animals are IKEA's best range of products by a mile. There is of course the big boy, Jungle Skog, the bear, that did the rounds on Twitter to the point where it's sold out on the IKEA website everywhere. You have a range of choices. The pig, the snake, the tiger, the panda, the wolf, the polar bear, the shark, but never fear. If you struggle to decide, you can take this BuzzFeed quiz to decide which one closely relates to you. Well, I took the test, answered each question, like pick a favourite snack. How does that relate to the... Anyway, my results were in. Blahaj, the shark. You're probably off enjoying the great outdoors. You're always on the move. I've spent the last week sat in front of my PC writing a video about a Swedish furniture store and taking a BuzzFeed quiz. Regardless, BuzzFeed had given me my IKEA stuffed animal of choice, Blahaj the shark. Thank you, BuzzFeed. So I headed over to the IKEA website and bought Jungle Skog the monkey. Come on, I had to. It's a damn monkey. Nothing against Blahaj, but look at him. And if you want to take a break from all the furniture action, you have IKEA's other attractions, like the restaurant, with the iconic IKEA meatballs. Scientifically proven that when consumed, each meatball increases your Swedish heritage by 1%. Or these huge billboards for cinnamon buns that state that this is not the actual size. Like people think that IKEA secretly serve a giant cinnamon bun that they're storing in the back, or somewhere that holds a soft spot in my heart. Small Land. Now this place brings back memories of when I was a kid. So simply put, Small Land is basically a sort of play area that parents can leave their kids in whilst they venture into the IKEA labyrinth. Now whenever I would enter Small Land, it felt like heaven. Rivers of plastic balls, felt trees to rest under after a hard day of doing absolutely nothing, caves to explore in. It was like an oasis, a resort. I could have spent hours in Small Land. Now I will admit, after Googling it as an adult, it didn't really live up to my memories, but I was convinced it was better than this. Maybe it was shrouded in nostalgia. Now, when you walk around IKEA, you of course don't just pick up the pieces of furniture out of the showrooms and put them in your trolley, regardless of what one couple thought.
No.
Instead, you note the little number down, and then when you finally reach the end of the store, you've even made it through the jungle of the houseplant section, the maze of miscellaneous movables behind you. With your notepad of products scribbled down with an IKEA pencil, you're presented with the warehouse, towering metal shelves piled with flat-pack fortunes. Very Costco-esque, in fact. Then you simply find the products down the hallway of boxes and pile them in your car. And finally, I thought I'd share some stories from the IKEA Berg. Firstly, the IKEA monkey. December 9th, 2012. Darwin the monkey escapes from a locked crate on a nearby truck, makes his way towards the closest IKEA, and in his fork shirling coat, just wanders around. Or when New Jersey couple Shirley Stewart and Berkeley Rashid Smith got married in their local IKEA, as it's where they met. Or the strange phenomena sweeping fashion, the trend of making IKEA-themed clothing, or even using the brightly coloured 99p IKEA bags to construct garments. I did indeed visit IKEA whilst making this video, and it's a great time. If you've never been, or haven't been recently, I highly recommend it. Walking around, the interior design skills of the showrooms genuinely does inspire you to spruce your own living space up. And a lot of what IKEA has to offer is some super high quality stuff. And the meatballs were pretty tasty.
They're pretty
Just
good.
whatever you do, no matter how badly you need it, never, ever attempt to use a showroom toilet. And with all of that said, goodbye!
All right, guys, I had fun. I will talk to you